Can you go for people? Okay. Africa, one verse, 16 bars. My heart beat for the north, east, west, central, South Africa, Egypt, Angola, Kenya, Ethiopia, north and south, Sudan, Chad, Swaziland, Sierra Leone, Senegal, Cape Verde, Somalia, Djibouti, Burundi, Mali, Malawi, the Guineas, Benin, Gabon, and Mozambique, Togo, Lesotho, the Republic of Congo, Burkina Faso, Comoros, Morocco, Rwanda, Uganda, Botswana, Ghana, Niger, Mauritania, Western Sahara, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, Zimbabwe, Madagascar, and other surrounding islands, Gambia, Zambia, Tunisia, Tanzania, Namibia, Eritrea, Libya, Algeria, Nigeria, and last but not least, the sweet land of Liberia, Africa.
All right, so why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Miles Eiton. I am the former co-president of the New College Student Alliance, aka our student government. I'm the founder of the New College Black Student Union.
My name is Lien Al-Fatafta. I'm Palestinian. I live in Jordan. I'm an international student here at New College.
My name is Paul Lauriston. I'm a fourth-year thesising student at New College of Florida. I'm studying economics, and I'm the president of the Black Student Union.
There's always something that I want to contribute to a space if I'm going to be inhabiting it. So I came to Sarasota and I said, hey, I'm here at this cool liberal arts college. They said you could be whatever you want to be. So I said, sure, I'm going to be all these things. Like, let's go.
When I first came here, initially, I started organizing to increase awareness about the Middle East in general and just Arab culture specifically. But then I started getting more and more involved with other groups on campus, and I became really passionate about institutional diversity. There weren't course offerings that I was interested in as a woman of color from the Middle East who's Muslim, who would like to see my culture represented on campus. So I started doing a lot of just institutional work regarding that, increasing diversity on campus.
There was like 10 black people on the entirety of the campus when I first got there. But yeah, and like my perception honestly was this is a sea of whiteness. That was my first perception.
At New College, the conversation just kind of like hovers around racism. We are trying. It's like just a check, like, oh, we did our diversity thing today.
I was kind of involved with Reina, who was the previous Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion, and I was really passionate about that kind of work. I felt like it would be really cool for us to have more people of color in the cabinet, you know, and just to try to like shift things around on campus, kind of like shift the status quo on campus.
I got involved with the student government at the school to this point as diversity representative. Me and Paul were just hanging around, and I said, hey, you know, if we ran for student body president, we definitely win.
You hit me up. Like, you hit me up, Miles Eiton. Shout out. And it's just like, I don't know why, but it was just like, yo, do you want to run for president? Like, I wanted to get more involved with the community, but I didn't know how. And I guess like just it kind of coalesced with the fact that like I was very, very aware of some problems going on in this institution, specifically as it pertains to diversity and inclusion, whatever they want to call it, you know. And I felt like, how do I position myself in a place to affect positive change most efficiently?
We were elected by what I believe someone told me was the largest margin of victory for student body presidents to have won by. We got 270 votes, and the next leading amount of votes didn't crack 100, definitely. So that felt great.
I got the job, and I guess part of me anticipated a slight pushback because it was a predominantly like people of color cabinet, but I did not expect like for us to be harassed in the way that we were. We started getting emails from one of the counselors, and these emails were saying that we're not doing our job properly, that we're inadequate. But we would go over everything, and you know, our work checked all the boxes. We were sending our emails on time. we're giving our updates, we're doing the, the work that we should be doing, all the red tape. Even we were going out of our way sometimes to do work that we shouldn't be doing. But they kept just hinting that like we're not adequate for the job that we had, and that if things keep going this way, they will try to get us like just removed from the cabinet.
We started noticing a lot more of the advice and criticism from these members of the student court, these two members, turn into just straight up pushback. And it just started becoming disrespectful, like blatantly like speaking over people at meetings and cutting people off and being rude, insulting people. So it got to the point where our executive secretary and our vice president of diversity and inclusion, both women of color, said, we are going to take this up with the student court, with you guys, because this is ridiculous.
Like just to have a white student, like honestly exhibit obsessive behavior about impeaching almost everyone, every person of color on the cabinet, to me was like beyond belief.
If you want to step up, if you want to kind of like have the opportunity to like make something of your community, maybe to affect change or whatever, you have to understand it's going to be backlash.
I didn't anticipate that much pushback, and I honestly, if I anticipated any pushback, I expected the student body to show up earlier than they actually did. To this day, I'm not really convinced that the student body was there for us as much as they were there for the drama and the gossip and the hype of it all, because if they really cared about us, someone would have made all of this happen way earlier than it did. Like this person started harassing us in October, and we almost got them impeached in May.
Everybody's clapping and echo chambering us and saying, yay, like, look at you wonderful students of color taking charge of your communities and taking control. And I'm like, but you all see this happening to us. You all see the student literally harassing us, these students. The Chief Justice encouraged them strongly to consider mediation, and essentially to just drop it just because, in his words, elections would be expensive. And that got really funny when weeks later, he would sit us down, me and Paul, in an office, our office, and say, there's about to be a case against you in student court and you probably should resign because you will not win. But we didn't do anything. Paul Shehu and I decided to accompany the incoming president, Jimena Pedrosa, to the Presidential Leadership Conference at Washington, D.C. So as we get to this conference, there is quite a few students of color out here, and it was a pretty powerful feeling knowing, okay, it's not just us, Primarily white institutions all across the board are seeing their students of color, stand up and take on these roles. But, then we stop and talk to them. Every black president or vice president, there was always a story.
The FBI is investigating a potential hate crime at American University in Washington. Students found several bananas Monday hanging from small ropes tied like nooses. Racist messages were written on the bananas.
This is not the first racist incident here at American University. In September, white students were accused of throwing a banana at one black student and leaving a rotten banana in the dorm room of another. This latest incident happened on the same day that a black woman became student body president, a first for this university.
Hate and racism and bigotry have no place on this campus, and that's not what we want here on this university. Not as a student, not a student government president, and on behalf of the AU community, that is not what we need here, and this is not what we need anywhere in this country.
I set off to Washington, D.C., first stop at American University. Taylor declined to take part in the interview.
There was an instance where white males were throwing bananas in dorms at black girls. And no, okay, yeah, so this was like a 2-banana incident. It was like the noose was hung with the banana and the black female president's name on it and her Greek organization, Alpha Kappa Alpha, on it. It was a very big issue. It was purposely targeted towards her. And it was like during the first day of her office, she was the first black woman to be the student body president. So it was a particular target against, they wanted to make it very clear this is a target to black women, and that was devastating. Then even earlier in the fall, that was when white males were throwing bananas at black females on campus. And that was my first year here. So I was like, whoa, where the heck am I?
And it's no coincidence that it was like, I think she was sworn in at midnight, and it was like 2 in.the morning that the nooses and bananas were put up on campus. I think particularly, obviously to target her, but just the fact that she was, and is a black woman and was coming into a position of power as the first time as a student body president on our campus.
There were Confederate flag posters with cotton balls that were like printed out and hung up in different places around campus, one of which was directly outside of my class. We got out, it was like almost midnight, and there was the poster over announcements for different Black student events that were being held.
Anonymous social media platform Yik Yak played host to some more comments and insults.
It feels kind of like they're trying to shut us up rather than coming to like a fair solution. Like what they don't want is for us to shut down the parking garage again. What they don't want is for us to have a riot on the quad. American kind of promotes itself as this very liberal, very like inclusive environment, which they are to a degree. But like those subconscious biases, like prejudice, like bubble over from time to time. And that's what happens with the banana incidents, the noose incidents, the Yik Yak incident. And the conversation was good, but we're kind of at a point now that we know AU is racist, so people are less fazed by it.
They say like, oh, it was just a joke. Like people feel very personal about these opinions, and they feel as if those opinions are being attacked when people push back on these jokes.
There's a clear feeling of students of color having incidents happen to them on rotation, and it's only a few of them that are gonna make the news, and it's only a few of them that we even get to know about. And the incident with Taylor just happened to be the one that blew up.
So this young man out of Clemson, he is a student vice president, and what he did was he sat down during the Pledge of Allegiance, aligning himself with the NFL. The student Senate voted 40-18 to impeach Jaron Stewart.
Hi, my name is Jaron Stewart. I'm a junior here at Clemson University. I study criminal justice and Spanish. I'm a double major. I'm from San Diego, California, and I've been at Clemson for 3 years. Hello, how are you? So this is Fort Hill. It is our resident plantation home on campus. Yeah, when you visit a cemetery, there's a very laid out path for where you're gonna walk. Clemson, I don't know where not to step. Everywhere could be history, everywhere could be an ancestor, everywhere, could be a gravesite. Our centerpiece of our campus commemorates such a time of slavery and bigotry.
That's still standing.
Yep, still standing strong. I was walking right here about 3 years ago. I was walking with a friend, and there was like just bananas hanging on a banner, and I just thought, like that's typical college kids, typical college town, like you just do stupid stuff. And I woke up in the morning to see the picture of bananas hanging on a banner everywhere, just sprawled on social media. And I was really trying to understand. I was like, oh, like, is it funny or something like that? And then I zoomed in on the sign, and I saw the banner was commemorating African Americans on Fort Hill, and that the banana was like a derogatory statement towards African Americans, calling them like porch monkeys, referring backwards. And being an out-of-state student, I could never fathom that initially because I didn't understand the racial tensions that exist in the South. So to me, I just thought, oh, kids were being funny. But to everyone that was present here and that's been here throughout the struggle of being a black student on a PWI campus, they understood it initially, like what type of an attack it was. So after it had blown up on social media about the banana hanging from the sign commemorating African Americans on Fort Hill, we had a march from Fort Hill all the way to Sykes right here. And we walked in and everyone said their piece. So there were some spoken word parts of it. There were strolls from various NPHCs, and they were all demonstrating their angst about the situation. And then we want to say 3 hours later, our good president comes down and has a camera rolling right behind him, and he's like, all right, let's sit down, let's talk about this. A very political response. Look at me talking to the people, look at me actually not dealing with the issues, but looking as I am. And everyone was put up with it, because essentially there have been so many incidents beforehand. We had a Christmas party, there was an MLK blackface party years beforehand, so the same students that had experienced that were still here. And so they had gotten used to the administrative response where it was just nothing, nothing at all. My first article that I was mentioned in politically was about the sitting down for the Pledge of Allegiance, the taking a knee, the finding solidarity with the NFL players, the larger grassroots movement. And I said that I had never felt comfortable in student government. And after taking the knee, I could kind of figure out who those people were and the way they looked at me and the way they responded by my gesture. Our campus was somewhat enraged, but also just the people's aunts and uncles were asking them, what's going on at Clemson? What's going on at Clemson? People were calling the donation center, like, I'm not giving any more money because of what's going on in student government, et cetera, et cetera. So I talked to campus. And when I was at campus, our forum, I met several veterans and people that are in Greek organizations, tour guides and whatnot. And one of the student vets asked me, why did I sit instead of take a knee? And I was like, you know what? I'll take a knee if you can continue this conversation. And so that actually changed my gesture. While the rest of senators sat down, I took a knee because that was a great way to start a conversation with someone.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The week after, there was a motion for impeachment. It was unsuccessful. There was an objection raised by Senator Thomas Marshall, and with that objection raised, it didn't go through, essentially, and we thought that was the end of it. We have this conservative writer on our campus who was in COC for a long time and claimed that procedure had been broken, and with that procedure being broken, that there should be a reintroduction of the impeachment because we didn't follow the rules in the way it was said, which was actually true. The Senate president made a mistake. And so the following week, I had to go to DC for a ACC Advocacy Day. And while I was away, I was getting texts from people like, yo, it's gonna go down today, et cetera, et cetera. My phone was blowing up. I essentially kind of knew what was coming. And then they had the debate here for 2 or 3 hours. And they voted 40-18 to go to trial for impeachment. And with that, it essentially blew up from Uproxx to Daily Mail to Seattle, the Seattle Post. People were speaking about the impeachment trial, what was going on here. While senators here tried to make it about one issue, it was so clear based on the timeline of what was at play here, what was really going on. The person that levied the impeachment charges, Miller Hoffman, his Twitter account will say, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, they belong in jails, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, anything you hear Ben Shapiro or, I forgot that alt-right guy, but anything somewhat conservative, you would hear that just retweeted on his Twitter. I mean, this guy is a Southern racist through and through. It became so much about impeachment. It wasn't about the $3,500 we raised for international disaster relief after Mexico, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. None of that mattered. It was, I want to impeach him. This is the guy we're going to impeach. And it seemed as if no one was on my side except for people that looked like me. Trying to explain the concepts such as racism and segregation and prejudice to people who've never experienced racism, segregation, or prejudice, I might as well have been giving them a nursery rhyme. I had to convince people of something that they've never experienced or really thought existed. It was how can we intimidate the minority students here? And we can take out their leader. They didn't like seeing a minority in the highest form of power, even as the vice president. If I was president, seeing me in a predominantly white space, people did not agree with that. They felt that it was wrong and they had to do something about it. They acted on it through impeachment.
In the fall of 2017, Ithaca police found and arrested John Greenwood, a 19-year-old white student who was charged with the assault on a black student.
Are you black? I'm sorry, I'm confused. Yo, what do you want from me? You must be a senator, you're black. Oh, Edward, all right. A senator. Oh, okay. Come fight us, you hear?
My name is Delmar Fears. I am a junior at Cornell University. I am co-president of Black Students United, and I also run Million Hoodies Cornell chapter on Cornell's campus. I've always really wanted to be an activist. In high school, like I was doing petitions against like our school's dress code. I've been doing my activism through art since I was 12, turning 13. So I'd really had a passion for social justice.
Man, I didn't think I'd see a
What?
white person with dreadlocks like in the north.
Oh yeah, we've been keeping track of him since my freshman year. Like, there's like 2 on campus, and I've definitely noticed them. Everybody does. I'm not sure when it was founded, but there was originally the Afro-American Society at Cornell. And their like kind of like big event that it's known for is the Williams Strait Hall takeover in 1969, where the Afro-American Society responded to a cross burning on the front lawn of the Black Women's Cooperative, One Waka One Wari. And so basically after this cross was burned on the front lawn of this Black woman's home, like this home for Black women, they occupied this building that we're in now, Williams Strait Hall, for 2 days. The first day was unarmed, and the second day was an armed takeover of this building. And in response, we, Black students, got a lot of demands met from the Afro-American Society. We evolved into Black Students United and have been involved in a variety of ways advocating for students. And I joined Black Students United at Cornell's campus my freshman year as a freshman representative. No, we gathered here outside of Day Hall, like groups of people all wearing all black, did some chants out here, and then went inside of Day Hall to deliver like the list of demands to the president. We had a big BSU banner chanting, and then there's literally so many people, like people couldn't even, not everybody could make it to the president's office. People literally walked to the staircase and had to turn back around. About a week before the actual like physical assault happened, this fraternity was accused of yelling, build a wall around the Latino Living Center. And so that started up like a debate about like kind of free speech versus hate speech on campus, because our university refused to do anything about it.
Because I'm part of BSU, we were definitely put on the spot in order to demonstrate something that not only showed the students who are part of the African diaspora or who were affected by the incident that were there for them, but also challenge the administration. I had an idea of, you know, the racial climate at Cornell, but I'd never seen an event or an incident like that, like so violent, happen before. So I was part of the protest. I helped organize it. I helped raise an awareness for it. It definitely was a whirlwind because I also go to, you know, an Ivy League school where academics are supposed to take precedence, but it's hard to, you know, focus on your studies in a place you don't feel safe in. And so my priority was making sure people felt safe. I would say Cornell prides itself on its diversity, for sure. I think it is really diverse. But something I've learned here is that diversity isn't the same thing as inclusivity. You can admit a certain group of people to a school and claim, yes, see how diverse we are, see how progressive we are, we have these type of people and these type of people, these type of people. But it doesn't really mean anything if you don't cater to them. A lot of those people who are part of the quota or who are part of the tokenistic quality of admissions are invisible, in my opinion. There's not many resources that cater to them. Professors don't really understand them. And so Cornell likes to boast about its numbers, and that's part of the reason I applied here. I was under the impression that it was a very diverse school, but as far as the essential resources to make them feel comfortable and welcome here, I feel like Cornell can be lacking. I think I speak for a lot of students when I say we were pretty dissatisfied, just in the sense where Cornell often leaves it up to these student groups to demand what they need as opposed to working with them.
I had a meeting with the Dean of Students as soon as this incident had occurred. Like, we got my 20-person executive board in the room with the Dean of Students, and he was saying like how glad that he was that student groups were the ones who were pushing for change on campuses, and universities were created so people could, so students were the ones to push for the change. And so like, I mean, that's like frustrating as a student to hear that like my experience is supposed to be me putting my emotional labor and time into bettering this university, whereas like I'm not being paid for that. That's not why I came to school. But, you know, live and let live.
Definitely, it's hard being a student at a PWI because white students get to focus on their grades and making it, internships. There comes another territory of being a student of color, and that's where you're always sort of conscious about your race in any setting you go to because this space was not made for you in the first place. I think a lot of college campuses are built on the exploitation of people of color. Cornell is an institution that, you know, was built on stolen land from the Cayuga Nation, and its legacy is white, successful men, you know, and it's not just this school. It is everywhere. It is so prevalent at any PWI, which are the majority of institutional, you know, or higher education in America.
I don't know what people are trying to prove by trying to stick to the status quo, and if it's obviously hasn't been working, students are still being beat up and are protesting for hundreds of years since these universities have been created. We were tired, like the amount of stuff that we did. We held a healing space. We raised funds for for the person who was injured. Like, we had meetings across like the communities to galvanize people. We met with professors, administrators, presidents, vice presidents. Like, we did so much work to come up with like this list of demands and more. And it was almost expected of us as students when something had changed and something bad had happened that we were going to be the ones to fix it. And that isn't fair, and we are burnt out and we are tired, and we're gonna keep doing it because we care.
If you just walk around campus, you'll see that you pass maybe 2 or 3 students of color maybe every day. Walking to classes and whatnot, I see probably about 3 or 4. Every class I'm in right now this semester, I'm the only black male.
Coming to PWI for the first time, I was really disappointed, really disappointed. In a lot of classes, I had to explain flat out what racism was, what bias was, what misogynoir was, and it surprised me that a lot of people, namely white people who were studying international relations, didn't have a competent understanding of the world around them outside of a Eurocentric lens.
If I find myself in a gender and society class, right, most of the students will be white women, which is fine. It's just that like a lot of the conversation leaves out women of color no matter how hard they push intersectionality, and I think it really depends on the professor. I mean, one of my friends is taking women in politics class, and the professor just, her words were, oh, you're really into this whole intersectionality thing, as if it was like some like obscure topic that shouldn't really, like it wasn't a main curriculum object, and it was about women in politics.
The concerns that I bring up about the coursework being very white and male is not something that a lot of people are confronted with, from what I've understood. And when I bring up studying from a post-colonial lens or recognizing Asian women's work in the field of international studies or recognizing just people of color's accomplishments outside of their association with the Western world, a lot of people are sort of taken aback and sort of feel like I'm disrespecting them. A lot of my professors, I feel like, may not feel like I'm disrespecting them, but I'm challenging them unnecessarily. But for me, I just feel like it's really academically dishonest to teach your students something that is incorrect in the scope of world history.
I just came to the realization that this is not my community. You know, I thought this was my community, but to this community, I will always be an outsider. You know, I will always be less than. I will always be an intruder.
Allyship in this space with these students, and I'm casting a really broad net and making a generalization. I don't think this is true for every student here, but it becomes this like badge of honor that students aspire to wear and aspire to have, without recognizing that it's
more of a verb than a noun and a continual process, and that it's not something you're going to necessarily get right in any one moment, but it's something you have to keep working towards.
You can wear all the Black Lives Matter stickers that you want. You can put them on your laptop. You can like have your 10 Black friends that you hang out with outside of class. But if you're still centering yourself in the conversation, if you're still not deconstructing entitlement and privilege and using your privilege and your platform to then create opportunity and access for others, then it's strictly performative.
To be good allies, you have to be willing to listen, you have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And they're like, some people get like 2 out of 3 of those things, but it really has to be all 3. You have to listen and actually implement that change.
I don't think students today, both white and Black students, were raised and brought up on a concept of racism that is correct. As Black students, we find it difficult at times to really stop and say, hey, what's going on right now is racist if you weren't called a nigger, or if you didn't get a banana thrown at you, or if you didn't, have something very explicitly 1960s happen to you. But this happened to us, and we really looked at it being from this liberal arts college. I love to talk about racism and sexism and all the isms like every waking moment, and really had to call out the hypocrisy.
A lot of people maybe feel comfortable and feel affirmed in their own identities and in feeling like an ally by pointing fingers and saying that racist over there, instead of focusing on your own development and your own walk as an anti-racist. Now, like being anti this person has become the new anti-racist, and the two, they're not the same thing. And in a way, I think it makes it harder to really recognize the spectrum of racist behaviors, racist thoughts, racist actions. I think it's made it really difficult for people to be honest with themselves and really do some self-reflection about ways that me and this person, who I think is really problematic, might actually be very similar.
You can be racist and not realize you're being racist. I'll say it like, especially as, for example, I'm a guy, I'm a male. I recognize I was raised sexist. There's still sexist attitudes that I would have to unpack about myself. And when someone calls me sexist, I could feel a kind of way, but there's always a basis of them being right. I've learned that racism is a bad word. Racism is the new nigger. You can call someone a racist and they will probably feel as if they'd react as if they'd been called a nigger these days. I've been called a nigger and I've responded much more calmly to white people who I've seen be called racist. And that's like...
It's so true though. As long as I was doing exactly like what people said, I was welcome, but anytime I needed help, or I wasn't being like on my perfect like Black student behavior, is when I got a lot of, I feel like, undue punishment and critique and unwelcomeness. I feel like either way we seem pushy, either way we seem loud, either way we seem obsessed with race, blah, 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 blah. And so we might as well ask for what we want instead of crumbs.
We weren't just making it for us now. It was for me and him and her and them and every other student of color who would come through New College and feel the way we felt.
You are your university. People will try to tell you that, the president's your university, that your professors are your university, but your university is really what you are and what you want to make of it, and you can change it if you want to.
I'm so proud of the resilience of my community, and I'm so proud of all that we achieved. Even if the university didn't realize all of it, we still had the capacity to think of those things on the spot, gather and organize and make something historic here. And so while I feel maybe a little bit more exhausted for sure, it also will change my future in Cornell in a way where I've seen tangible change happen. I know I can make more tangible change happen, so I'm just more motivated than ever.
Change it, because it's not going to be good when you get there, but you can try to make it better for the next person who comes along.
be the person to make the change, even if you're standing alone. Be brave enough to stand alone and do it afraid.
Your very existence is revolutionary, and you do whatever you need to do for yourself to continue to exist in that space.
Attend an HBCU.